Welcome to our flipped classroom for trigonometric ratios, lesson 9.5. In front of you, you will see a right triangle with the hypotenuse labeled, the opposite side, and the adjacent side. But those labels can only be there if we know which angle we are talking from or about. When we have the opposite side on the lower half of the triangle, we need to make sure that we are talking about the triangle from the perspective of the smiley face. So the side opposite the smiley face is the one that it would be looking at. The adjacent side is the one that would connect at that vertex. And the hypotenuse will always be the side across from the right angle. So when we look at how to find out trig ratios, we are going to remember the acronym that I talked about today, SOH, CAH, TOA. And for those of you who are concerned, my toe is feeling much better. Thank you. All right. So again, our opposite and our adjacent could change if we move the angle that we are talking about. So if this smiley face moves down here, our opposite and our adjacent would have to switch. But we will talk about that more as we need to. What I'd like for you to grab right now is the pink worksheet that says 16.6 on the bottom, and it says who turns out the lights on Halloween. It would also be helpful at this time for you to get a scientific calculator. If you need time to go get that, please pause the recording and come back when you are done. All right, so we have our worksheet in front of us, and it says in the first one, number 1, it says we need to find out the sine of 22 degrees. I'm going to just use S. The sine of 22 degrees equals x over 15. To solve for x, what we're going to do is we are going to actually figure out what the sine of 22 degrees is. So grab your calculator, and I want you to find on your calculator the button 7. 2 up from the 7, you will see SIN. So hit sine, and then type in 22 and equals. You're going to see a long number. Trig tables only go 4 places. So what we're going to do is we're going to write down what those 4 places are. For the sine of 22 degrees, it's 0.3746 is equal to what number divided by 15? In order to figure that out, we are going to multiply both sides by 15 to solve our equation. So all of our common knowledge that we have for solving equations is still going to come up even though we're talking about that new topic of trigonometry. So I'm going to actually take the number that I have in my calculator and leave it, and then just multiply that by 15. And we should get something that is looking like 5.619, and it says round to your solution 2 decimal places, so 5.62 is what that would round to. So the distance, this would be, that x value, that would be one distance or length on part of the triangle. It would be the side that is the opposite of that 22 degree angle, which is something that Pythagoras could not do. Pythagoras could only find the side lengths. He couldn't figure out the angles of a right triangle, where trigonometry uses angles to find the side lengths, and vice versa for that. So that's the answer to number 1. Pretty straightforward. Let's try number 2. Number 2, now we're going to use that different. We're going to use the tangent. I'm going to shorten it for t of 75 degrees. And we're going to figure out what the length of the opposite side is. And that 80 represents the adjacent side. So again, we're going to use our calculator, and we're going to type in tangent. Okay, now that button is going to be 2 buttons up from the 9. So tangent of 75 degrees and I'm going to hit enter. On your calculator, you should get 3.7320, etc. And to solve this equation, we know that we would have to multiply by 80. And I'm leaving that value on my calculator. I'm going to multiply that by 80, and I get the value of n is equal to 298.56. Oh, yeah, 56. On the bottom they have it as not 298.57. But again, as we go along, we're going to cross off the answers. And we can't fill in the bottom until all of the answers have been completed. Okay? Number 2 is a little bit different. We're still dealing with the sine of an angle. So we're going to find the sine of 48 degrees. And that's going to be used to help us to figure out what this value in A is. They call it A, but really it is the hypotenuse. This gets a little trickier because we need to multiply both sides by A in order to figure this out. So I'm going to use my sign button, type in 48, and I'm going to write that decimal down 4 places. 0.7431. That got multiplied by A. Over on the right hand side, those A's canceled out, equals 7. One more step in this one than the previous problems that we had to do. Divide both sides by 0.743 0.7431. These cancel out. And A is equal to 9.42. 9.42. And again, we find that answer on the bottom, and we cross that one off. So now, you guys and girls could finish number 4. Let's go ahead and take a look at number 5. So number 5, they have a triangle drawn for us, and we have all the parts of the triangle that we need to figure out that length of x. So x is over here. The hypotenuse is 10. When I realize that I have the hypotenuse, I know that I'm going to be using either the sine trig function or cosine. Tangent never uses the hypotenuse. And when I'm given the hypotenuse, again, that eliminates tangent. Now I know that this is 35 degrees. So what I'm dealing with is I have 35 degrees. The side opposite of the angle that I'm given is x. Opposite. I have opposite and hypotenuse. The trig function that deals with opposite and hypotenuse is sine. Cosine deals with the adjacent. So we set up an equation. We're going to figure out the sine of 35 degrees. The sine of 35 degrees has to be equal to x, the opposite, over the hypotenuse. Now we have a familiar equation. We grab our calculator and we go sine of 35 is 0.57357. That's going to need to get multiplied by 10. So I'm going to leave that on my calculator. Multiplying it by 10, well, you know what? It just moves it decimal place one place. So x equals 5.73. 5.74. And let's see if that answers down at the bottom. and they have it as 5.7. So we'll have to round just a little bit. And we better put our label on there that that is inches. That is the coolest thing that you can do with trig ratios. Let's try another one. Okay, number 6 on that worksheet. We have our triangle here. Hard to draw, nice straight. Okay, here's our right angle. Again, we're dealing with hypotenuse. I know that I'm going to either be working with sine or cosine. Those are the two trig ones that work with hypotenuse. I've got a 54-degree angle here. From the 54-degree angle, this x is the adjacent. Since it's the adjacent, I know that I am going to work with cosine. So the cosine of 54 degrees equals the adjacent x over 35 degrees. I'm sorry, not 35 degrees, 35 meters. Great. I know how to figure out the cosine of 54 degrees. That is the button 2 above the 8. Cosine, cos, 54 equals, now I know that I am going to have to, you could set it up as a proportion like this, multiply that by 35 to get x by itself. And when I multiply that together, I get x equals 20.57. And we'll put our label on there as meters. Alright, so some of you may be feeling a little overwhelmed. It's okay. This is brand new to some of you. Here is what I'd like to review. These are your key concepts that will help you be successful. When you're looking at a right triangle, I need you to be able to recognize the hypotenuse right away. If this is the angle that I'm focusing on, I need you to recognize where's the opposite and where's the hypotenuse. This is the opposite. I said hypotenuse, I meant to say adjacent. Let's make that the magic word, adjacent. That's our new vocabulary for the day. So there's our magic word, adjacent. This is a key concept that I need you to make sure that you can do. Then I need you to be confident that the sine is figured out by comparing the opposite over the hypotenuse. The cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. And the tangent is the opposite over the adjacent. Sa, ka, toa. Now, there are a lot of questions on this page. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to break it up. I don't need you to do all of the questions on this page. When I see you tomorrow, we will work on 1 through 9 in groups on page 16.8 that says, what do you get? Here's what I need you to do. I need third hour to do 7, 10, and 15. Third hour is going to do 7, 10, and 15 right now. Fourth hour is going to go 8, 11, and 14. Fourth hour is 8, 11, and 14. Fifth hour is 9, 12, and 13. And sixth hour is 7, 12, and 14. Please spend the next few minutes doing those questions, and I will help you with anything you have questions on tomorrow. Have a fantastic evening.